It's time to solve the mystery in space of all the strange adventures of DC Comics Rocket Pac-Man named Adam Strange, because your Geek History lesson is now in session. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I am Jason, got a fin on my head, Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or Rocket Man from popular culture and teach you everything you need to know about them in about an hour. Jason, you're smiling. Is that because I sang?
I didn't even consider that joke until you brought it up, but now it's not going to stop.
Okay.
Because he is a Rocket Man.
He is a Rocket Man.
Oh, that's so great.
Look, as two resident experts on rocket people,
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a great time. And we are talking about strange adventures because...
We're talking about Adam Strange, not Strange
We are
Adventures.
talking about Adam Strange
Now,
because Strange Adventures is out in the world.
Yes, Strange Adventures is the new series being published by DC Comics right now. It's available digitally wherever you can get it. Physically, consult your local city.
Television. Your local TV guy.
You should consult your local television to find out whether your local city is open, because that would mean if your local comic book shop might be able or open.
That's true.
To sell you Strange Adventures. At the time of this recording, Strange Adventures number 2 has not been released. We don't know when, sometime in June possibly, but we still thought we'd talk about Strange Adventures, because the week this episode's coming out was when Strange Adventures number 2 was supposed to come out.
Back in the before times.
But back in the before times. So we thought we still... we do have a couple of Geek History Lesson fans that have suggested us to talk about Adam Strange.
Heck yeah.
Ashley, if they want to be a cool fan like these two gentlemen that I'm going to name, where can they do that?
Yes, and sometimes it's only one person, and that's even more exciting. If you want to request an episode, you can do that all over the internet, including geekhistorylesson.com, facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, or on Twitter at GHL Podcast. We keep track of every request. We have some requests going back to yesterday, some going back to when we started.
We have over 300 requests.
Yes, but having you be part of the show like this, it's really cool. And we do pay attention. If you'll remember our Donna Troy episode, sometimes we put out episodes just because people really want them.
Yes. So this episode was suggested by Josh Pinto and Dave Nelson. So Josh and Dave, thank you so much for suggesting that we talk about Adam Strange. And if you're not Josh or Dave and you're just a listener, kind of like, I don't care about Adam Strange, maybe I'll leave, maybe I'm going to hop out. I would actually suggest that you don't, because this episode, we have a very special discussion where we are joined with not one, not two, but all three main creators of the new Adam Strange series, Strange Adventures. I'm talking about Tom King, Mitch Gerads, and Doc Shaner, the creators of the DC Comics Black Label book named Strange Adventures, starring Adam Strange. We will be joined with them in the discussion, so stick around to that part of the episode.
2 returning guests, 1 first-time guest.
Yes, that's correct. Tom and Mitch have both been on the show before.
Yeah.
All excellent gentlemen. All right, so let's move into this Adam Strange episode with the first section of our podcast called The 10-Cent Origin.
And the 10-Cent Origin is, as Jason mentioned, the first part of the podcast where we go through all the basics, who's its and what's its galores. It looks like intern Brego will be joining us for this in case you take your cat to a cool cocktail party and people are like, what's up with this Adam Strange guy? Because obviously you're going dressed as the greatest rocket person, Jupiter Jet.
Yes, GHL intern cat Brego just hopped up right up to the mic. So if you were listening during any of Ashley's stuff, you might have heard some purrs. The 10-Cent Origin for Adam Strange is, of course, he is a DC Comics superhero. He was created by Julius Schwartz and Murphy Anderson. His first appearance was in Showcase number 17, published in November of 1958. You know what? Let's Ashley, remind me to circle back around. I want to talk about Showcase.
Okay.
He, of course, is a human. His team affiliations have been the Justice League United, the Justice League Canada, Seven Soldiers of Victory, and Rebels. That's REBELS. His abilities are, he has interstellar travel with a jetpack, he has a spacesuit, he has a spacesuit that creates hard light constructs, he has an energy gun, or as I'd like to call it, a pew-pew gun. He has cloned eyes, which make the electromagnetic structure visible, which won't happen till later, and he's been portrayed in live action by Sean Cephos. I've never heard his last name said out loud, who of course played Adam Strange on Krypton.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Cephos?
I'm gonna be honest. I have no idea.
I've never heard his name said out loud.
I think Sean is a really good Adam Strange.
I think so too.
He looks shockingly like Jeff Johns, who loves Adam Strange and wrote on Krypton.
Yes. Let's talk about Showcase real quick. Ashley, do you know what Showcase is? We talk about Showcase a lot on this show, and I just realized that maybe our listeners don't know what Showcase is.
Showcase was one of those anthology books. DC, most comics at the time, and at that by me saying that, what I mean is during the golden age of comics, most comics were more like the Archie Digest. They were a lot of smaller stories collected together. And I know that Showcase was used as a trial ground and an introduction for a lot of characters who would then go on, depending on their genre, to be in Detective Comics or Sensation or Adventures in Space, maybe.
Yes, Showcase, if I remember right, was basically continually published from somewhere in the 60s to about 1994 or 95. Mm-hmm. And I know that because when I first started reading comics, there would be Showcase, and they would call it Showcase 94, and you get 12 issues, and then when it became 95, it'd be Showcase 95. And I think Showcase 95 or 94 is the last one, but I always enjoyed it. I understand why anthology books, because each issue would just star a different DC character that they'd be showcasing. But the brilliant thing about it is that sometimes you'd have an issue starring the Joker, or sometimes you'd have an issue starring Tim Drake Robin, or Blue Beetle, or it would just be like all the weird characters. Characters that don't have solo series, or characters that wouldn't have solo series, would sometimes get shots and showcase. And they would try out new artists there, new writers would get shots there. I understand, again, why they don't sell, because you don't know what you're getting, right? And comic book fans are about consistency, but I just want to put this out there. I miss that there is no Showcase. There should be a digital Showcase. I'm going to say that.
Ooh, I think that's brilliant, because I definitely think there is a place for anthologies in the current comic book landscape. Yeah. I don't think we've cracked what it is for the modern age. Dark Horse keeps revisiting Dark Horse Presents, and some issues do well and some do a little less well, but I think there's room for superhero anthologies.
I'm going to throw this out there right now to DC Comics. This is a free idea, my friends. Do a digital Showcase, or do a Showcase physical issue once every quarter. They're about, let's say, 100 pages. They're 100-page giants. You hire one writer to write the entire 100 issues.
100 pages.
100 pages, excuse me, sorry. One writer, each 10 pages, different character.
I think that's really interesting.
Different artist.
So you could be like, for example, because he's on the episode, Tom King's Showcase.
Yeah, so it'd be Tom King's Showcase, and then Steve Orlando's Showcase, or Gail Simone's Showcase, or whoever you want to grab in there. But it would be interesting because, you know, the editors could be like, okay, this is the character that we want on the cover, because that's
probably
the character,
a Bat family member.
Well, that's the character that'll sell the book. Yeah, and then you choose whatever you want.
Well, or perhaps these are the characters who are going to be making minor appearances in some of our TV shows.
Sure.
So, like, we would love if you highlighted 5 of these 35 characters.
I think it'd be fun to see the same voice on a bunch of different characters.
I think that's really cool.
Yep. Please take that, DC.
Jim Chadwick, you let us know when you've picked that up.
All right, so let's move to the Meet Cute section of the podcast.
Which is the second part where we tell you the first time we meeted a character and how cute it was.
Ashley, where did you first meet Adam Strange?
For a long time, I thought Adam Strange and Doctor Strange were the same character.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You thought he was Dr. Adam Strange?
When I was a little kid.
All right.
Yeah, because they were just names of characters that I'd never read, but you'd hear bandied around. I think the first Adam Strange story I read might have been Justice League Canada.
Really?
Where I was like, oh, cool, Adam. I mean, I'd obviously read other things that he'd been in, but where he was like a really important player. Because, listeners to this podcast know that cosmic-y stuff isn't always my jam. And the thing about cosmic-y stuff, and the thing about cosmic-y history lessons is it's so convoluted just because this is like creating a high fantasy realm. You have to create all the rules, all the mythos up from jump. And the minute you do one retcon, things get really, really complicated and really hard to and Adam Strange has a couple pretty significant retcons.
And there's also a lot of hand waving in Adam Strange's history.
Which,
if you don't understand what that means, we mean hand waving by it's like, oh, just ignore this other story because this is the
comics.
story. Yeah, because this is the story we're telling now. Forget that he had a daughter. Who cares?
Yeah, the older I get, the less I am bothered by hand waving, ironically enough.
Well,
I'm like, just tell me the rules of the world now, it's fine.
We talk about this all the time, and we even have a t-shirt that says make your own continuity over at our, is it T-Fury?
It's T-Public.
T-Public store, tpublic.com/Jawiin, I believe, or you can go find it at geekhistorylesson.com. It's t-shirts. Make your own continuity. I really do think you make your own continuity.
But I will say, even though I haven't read a ton of Adam Strange, I like the character and I like the rules of who the character is. So that's why something like Strange Adventures for me is very exciting. It's an opportunity to like kind of a definitive take on him. So that's my convoluted meet cute. And what is yours?
I don't really have a definitive meet cute with Adam Strange. To me, he was always that guy that you would see in DC group shots in the 90s that would have the fin on his head. With the fin, yeah. And I'd be like, who is this, like Buck Rogers character that is back there with the pew pew and the fin?
You know who Buck Rogers was when you were a young man?
A little bit, yeah. I didn't really get to know exactly who he was until Infinite Crisis and the story Planet Heist, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But he was just spaceman, weird spaceman guy that would show up every once in a while.
Fair.
So there you go.
All right, let's move now into the History 101, which is the main meat of the lesson where Professor Jason is going to take us right to the cosmic-y nonsense of Adam Strange.
Yes, but we're going to start in the comic booky nonsense of publication history first.
Equally nonsensical, if we're going to be honest.
Now, in 1957, DC Comics decided we want a new science fiction superhero. So editorial director Erwin Donenfeld asked Jack Schiff and Julius Schwartz, editors of the time, to do this. It's funny because they actually wanted two sci-fi heroes, one from the future and one set in present day. So Jack Schiff created Space Ranger. Actually, do you know who Space Ranger is?
A cowboy in space.
No, not really.
The Lone Ranger in space.
It's actually set in the 22nd century, and Space Ranger is actually called Rick Starr. He's a guardian of the solar system. Basically, he's a space traveling adventurer / superhero / Han Solo type.
Okay, cool.
So that's who Space Ranger is. Now, Julius Schwartz created Adam Strange, who, of course, is the Earthman who traveled from planet to planet in the Alpha Centauri system via a Zeta Beam and utilized space radiation. Now, fun fact, he's actually named Adam after the biblical Adam for being the first human to ever visit another planet.
Cool.
So, Adam Strange debuted on the cover of Showcase number 17, which is also his debut issue, and was originally drawn by artist Murphy Anderson, but Julius Schwartz actually hated Anderson's art and actually had Gil Kane, who is a legendary Batman artist, redraw the same design on the cover that was ultimately used. Let's actually talk about Showcase 17 because I love going.
So rude.
Yeah. Hey man, it's a rough business. You got to deal with it. You got to deal with you got to run. If Gil Kane's going to replace you, Gil Kane's going to replace you. But let's talk about Showcase 17 because I love going back to the original issues and telling you what actually happened. So the issue Showcase 17 actually starts with a cool text box that says, across 25 trillion miles of space, the planet Ron circles the star sun Alpha Centauri. This is the thing I like about this, is that it actually locks down the location of Ron to a physical location in our galaxy. Alpha Centauri is a real star.
It is.
And I actually like that because, we don't really know where Oa is, except it's like in the middle. It's at the center of the galaxy, supposedly.
Yeah, whatever that means, yeah.
But we don't know where Korrigar is, Sinestro's home. We don't know where Thanagar is, but I like that, we know Ron is in that star system. In fact, we didn't even know where Krypton was until in the New 52, they hired Neil deGrasse Tyson to be like, they said, pick, where do you think he would be? Here's the information, 33 years, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm still not certain where that is. But listeners, if you know, email us.
Well, because let's be honest, this is cool to know about Ron, but in that hand-wavy way, it doesn't really matter because most human beings reading these comics have no concept of the galaxy.
That's true. That's very true. This story goes down to say that Adam Strange arrived to fight the Eternals, who are super scientific creatures who destroy all that oppose him. Now, this
Whoa, Jason, whoa. But the Eternals are a Marvel thing.
Well, fun fact, listeners, the Eternals, these are not the same Eternals, of course.
I mean, yeah.
But these are DC's Eternals, and this is 1958. Marvel's Eternals showed up in 1976. So I'm just going to say that Mr. Jack Kirby, who
worked for both companies very famously.
Who worked for both companies very famously and actually created the Eternals when he went back to Marvel after working in DC and creating the Fourth World, might have heard the name Eternals during some of his work and just kept it.
There you go.
Now, Adam Strange is an archaeologist. He's a lot like the original Hawkman, who he actually frequently teamed up with. And he is working in Peru as an archaeologist when he is suddenly transported to the planet Ron on a Zeta Beam. Now, this is explained by the Ronian scientist Sardoth. He developed a ray designed to communicate with alien life forms across vast distances. Now, this was, of course, supposed to be the Zeta Beam, but the Zeta Beam became infused with cosmic rays, and they specifically say cosmic rays, and it somehow changed into a teleportation beam. Now, it's actually quite coincidental that it reached out and touched Adam Strange at all, and that it happened to find him in Peru, but it did because of comic books. And the minute he lands on Ron, he is attacked by a whole bunch of alien bug creatures and predators, and he's eventually rescued by the dark-haired beauty Alana. Now, she picks him up in this giant red space car, and she takes him to her father, Sardath. Remember, Sardath created the Zeta Beam, and he basically explains all this information to Adam. Now, Sardath tells Adam that the Zeta Beam was actually looking for intelligence life on Earth to bring back to Ran, but it actually took 4.3 years for the beam to get from Ran to Earth and all the space radiation stuff that got in the way. So basically, without the Zeta Beam, there is no way for Adam Strange to get back.
He's trapped. He's lost in space.
Yes. Well, you also assume that, like, at this, that Ron is 4.3 light years.
Which is so much.
It might be more than that,
so
actually.
Much distance.
Because there's nothing to say that anything in this universe can travel at the speed of light. But anyways, we're not going to get down that rabbit hole.
We're not going to do actual science.
They basically say, Adam, you can't go home. So why don't you just go walk around Ran a bit?
Yeah,
so he does. And we get this giant exposition dump about Ran. And we learn that Ran suffered a series of atomic wars that plunged the planet of Ran into the Dark Ages. Now, countries degenerated into warring city-states. And then the ambient radiation, because everything in the 60s is about radiation, y'all, left behind the wars actually rendered most of the male populace sterile, and the citizens of Ron came close to the brink of extinction. Now, I'm going to stop you right here. The whole thing about the male populace being sterile did not exist in Adam Strange's first issue. That is a retcon that is now generally assumed, and in most versions of the story, that is considered to be
canon.
That is how it happened.
Okay.
In this version, they never once talk about that none of the Maranian males are fertile, if you will.
They would be virile. Women are fertile.
Oh,
Men are virile.
Excuse me. Yes. And don't, men are fertile. We're going to take that back.
You know
We're going to take that back,
You're
man.
right. You're right.
We're going to take that
You're
back.
Right. Some men can be fertile.
Yes, and
some women can be virile.
Yeah.
You're right.
Don't,
You're right.
there's no black and white here.
Well, this is 1957, so it's a little more.
Okay, for 1957, it's very black and white. Yes.
A little more stringent. But you're right. Thank you.
In future retellings of this origin, it was Sardath's hope that Adam would mate with his daughter Alana, and that the couple would produce the first Ranian offspring in years. But in the first adventure, Adam is just a man. He has no jetpack, and he's just the guy that saves Alana with her fancy rocket ship. And eventually, since the Zeta Beam is not well calibrated, its power does wear off, and Adam is basically dissolved back to Earth. He fades back to Earth, where he arrives at the exact moment of his departure, and no one even knew that he was missing.
Well, that's convenient.
But luckily, off camera, Sardath gave Adam the exact schedule of when the Zeta Beam would fire again in the future so that he would be able to return to Ran. And he actually he says this in one of his panels, he has 62 days, 15 minutes, and 5 seconds to get to the south coast of Singapore to meet the beam up again if he wants to see Alana.
Singapore?
Yeah. Actually, let's talk about the Zeta Beam.
Okay.
And this is something actually that I talk a bit about with writer Tom King about in this discussion that's later down in the episode. Stick around.
We're revealing to everyone that we record out of order.
Who cares? Editing. Anyways, the Zeta Beam makes no damn sense.
I said this at the top of the episode.
Yeah.
Cosmic-y nonsense. Nothing cosmic-y makes sense because it's junk science.
Yes, because why would this Zeta Beam touch Earth at different locations?
Well, okay. I actually think you could really easily... I think you can actually really easy hand wave that away. Just say because, if Ron is 4.3 or whatever light years away, maybe the aiming module on it can't be that specific. Mm-hmm. So he's doing his best, so at least he's still in the southern hemisphere.
Yes. Because
we previously got Adam from Peru, but also if you're able to build something that can reach 4.3 million whatever light years, shouldn't you be able to aim it?
I would just also think that this was some sort of energy beam, right? It wouldn't touch specific parts on Earth. It would hit our atmosphere, probably become dispersed.
Through water and optics.
Or just the atmosphere. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it would maybe be exposed to an entire continent. Yes. Or an entire state.
Yeah.
Like, this is how specific...
Well, Singapore is kind of small. Maybe it could hit all of Singapore.
But this is how
country.
specific it gets later.
Oh, God.
There is actually a story, and I won't talk about it really. There is, I believe it's written by Alan Moore, where Adam Strange has to run into a shopping mall, and he has to run into a men's bathroom because the Zeta Beam is going to touch one of the stalls in this men's bathroom. And he, opens the door. There's a dude in there
of course.
Doing his business, and Adam has to throw him out and, jump into the stall to hit the Zeta Beam.
That's dumb. I'm really sorry. Yeah. I know Alan Moore is a genius. We love our wizards, but that's dumb.
Well, I believe that's Adam. I believe that is Alan Moore making fun of how ridiculous this is.
Okay, well, fine.
But yes.
So whatever. He goes to Singapore. He gets to eat some great food.
Yes. Anyways, so let's make the ruling. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, back to publication history.
Okay.
Soon after this, Schwartz fired the creators and actually handed over the writing duties of Adam Strange to Gardner Fox, who was an iconic Flash writer, and Mike Sekowsky. Now, all the stories were created in Julius Schwartz's office with his input, and he was actually known for pinpointing scientific details that could be used to inform Adam Strange's storylines, because they wanted Adam Strange to sort of be educational. But here's the other thing about this. They kind of just made a lot of it up.
Well, I mean, you and I know firsthand what that's like.
But I will say that they tried to do this, but there is a lot more hand waving and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's just hard water makes people give super speed, and you're like, But yes, we actually used a lot of that kind of same idea when we came to writing our comic book, Science, The Elements of Dark Energy, because it's about a futuristic science school, and we wanted the basics of their concepts to be based in science, and then that would push us into science fiction. And if you're interested in that all ages book, Ashley, what would you say the logline of that is?
Oh, I would say it's imagine if Harry Potter went to the most advanced Star Trek school, but instead of wanting to study under Dumbledore, he wanted to kill Dumbledore and was a nice Indian American girl.
There you go. It's about a team of kids using some science. So we called it Science. You can go pick that up at jasonenman.com/store. It's a signed copy, in fact.
Also, please go nominate it for a Ringo Award at ringoawards.com.
Yeah, there you go. Now, Adam's early stories were mostly one-shots, and then there's little continuity from one story to the next. They're basically all self-contained, and these stories would basically all start with Adam Strange on Earth, and he would be transported to Rann by the Zeta Beam, where basically he would meet Alana. Alana would be like, "There's aliens again!" And he would help save them from Earth, and then he would end the issue with going back to Earth.
Okay.
Although the Zeta Beam would later be modified so that Adam could stay on Rann. But that's a lot of his Silver Age stories that we're really not going to go into, because what's the point of it? It's kind of like what we talk about with Batman villains.
Exactly, yeah.
It's the same story over and over and over, and nothing really changes.
Well, especially when you don't have a solo title.
Yes.
At this time, it's a lot of copy repeat.
Now, here's the interesting thing. His appearances in Showcase actually were so popular that they eventually moved Adam Strange into his own title. Now, you may think that he was moved to Strange Adventures. No. Adam Strange appeared in Mystery in Space.
Great title.
Captain Comet is the one who appears in Strange Adventures.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not until the modern day story of Strange Adventures that Tom King and his crew have claimed Strange Adventures for Adam Strange.
I mean, it's a great title for him. Yes. From a branding perspective, it's a very smart move.
But Adam Strange did not appear in Mystery in Strange Adventures.
I see.
So these mystery and space stories were drawn by Carmine Infantino, and this ran from issue 53 to 102. It introduced Ron. We got great introductions of Kanjar Rowe. They added the Justice League to his mythology. Fun fact: Barry Allen the Flash is actually the hero who suggests Adam Strange should join the Justice League of America.
That is cool.
Yes, and actually, Mystery in Space number 75 in May of 1962 won the Alley Award for Best Book-Length Story of 1962.
There you go. I don't think that award exists anymore.
I don't think so either.
But comics, especially during that time, didn't win a ton of literary awards, so that's pretty special.
So we're going to go back into the fictional character biography here. Now, Adam Strange manages basically to be the super duper hero of Ron, and he makes out with Alana a lot. And he makes out with her so much so that he marries her in 1967 in Hawkman Volume 1, number 18.
Aw, sweeties.
And then after that, throughout the 1970s, basically Adam is relegated to a supporting character and kind of gets put out into the back burner until September of 1980. And this is when he joins the cast of Green Lantern and a series of backup stories, specifically in issues 132 to 147.
Nice.
Basically, these short form stories were Hal Jordan, which, by the way, we did a Geek History lesson. We did 2-part Geek History lesson, episodes 202 and 203. Go listen to those in our feed here.
Taught by you.
Yes. Hal Jordan would fight a baddie. Then Adam Strange would fight the same baddie in a different time period.
Okay.
So that's how it worked.
That's kind of cute.
Yeah. But in the 1980s, iconic writer Alan Moore got
speak of the devil and he will appear.
hands on Adam Strange and gave the character his first retcon. Now, some of these are in short stories and showcases, and some of these are in Saga of the Swamp Thing, his very famous Swamp Thing run, which if you've never read is literally one of the greatest comic book runs of all time.
Cool.
In fact, Alan Moore is the first person to give the reason for Adam Strange going to Ron instead of him happening to be there. It is Alan Moore who made the people of Ron sterile. So there again, Adam Strange was made to be a breeding stud because the nuclear wars had made the Iranians sterile. Now, actually, I want to talk about this a little bit because a lot of 50s, 60s sci-fi deals with sterile populations, and that
I hate this trope.
Even though this isn't a 50s sci-fi storyline, like The Time Machine, very famous novel, deals with that. The Morlocks or the crazies, but eventually humanity became sterile and stuff like that. Why is sci-fi obsessed, especially classic sci-fi, obsessed with sterile populations?
Two thoughts. One, the 50s and 60s are directly preceded by the 1940s. The 1940s was the beginning, not the beginning of, but involved a lot of government experimenting on military or police or students psychedelically and physically without their consent. And this was stuff that was starting to come to light with things like Operation Paperclip in the 50s and 60s as we got more into the nuclear age. So I think that this was probably just something that was in the air. And so, of course, we would put it into our storytelling also. And people are going to feel some kind of way because all of these stories are written by men. And the scariest thing that can happen to a man is you would become impotent.
I can think of a lot more scarier things, but...
But I mean, if you're sort of thinking about from like a biological imperative kind of point of view, like those to me are the most obvious reasons why. Also because fertility, because it's so baked into, the whole point of living and being a part of a species. The scariest thing that could happen to you as a species would be that you could not make any more of you. Mm-hmm. But it is interesting that you point out how popular it was at the time, because when you were talking about this with Adam Strange, I was thinking, I wonder if Brian K. Vaughan was really into Adam Strange around the time that he developed Y the Last Man.
I don't know.
Which, kind of a similar point of view.
Anyways, so now I want to tell you, lovelies, about this new Business Network of podcasts. Yes, that's right. We have an ad here, but this is a free podcast, so deal with it. I want to tell you about Scald Tail Entertainment LLC. It's a new business network of podcasts and streams with an emphasis on collaborative storytelling. At Scald Tail Entertainment, they believe that tabletop systems are a new media art form that can tell impactful stories, which is something I believe as well. They currently have 3 shows in their lineup, which includes Werven's Aria Podcast, a D&D game where they fantasy continent travel through the multiverse. Throwing Bones Podcast. It's a queer-led role-playing podcast that focuses on themes of diversity and mental health and interpersonal relationships.
You know I love that.
And then also they have the Eclipse Stream, which is basically what happens when the sun god disappears and the sun is unable to shine its light on the world. Now, Scald's Tail Entertainment LLC is owned by Christopher Rondeau, and Christopher works as a full-time game master. He's also a writer for Majorspoilers.com. And you can find Scald's Tail and all their podcasts at scaldstail.com. Now, it's a very difficult word to pronounce. I'm going to spell it for you. It's SKALDSTALE. Scald's Tail, TALE.com. And you can also find them on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch at Scald's Tail. And you can prepare for their upcoming crowdfunding campaign at the end of May. So thank you, Scald's Tail, for sponsoring this episode of Geek History Lesson.
Thank you. We love them. We love Chris. He's really, really kind. So please go and show them some love.
Yeah, go check that out. All right, now back to Adam Strange.
Dun, dun, dun.
Adam Strange's next significant appearance is a miniseries that was called Adam Strange, but it has now become known. That does not make sense. Is now known as Adam Strange, the Man of Two Worlds. And this is actually one of the early stories drawn by Andy Kubert. Andy Kubert, son of the famous Joe Kubert. Now, Adam is on Earth for the last time before the mega Zeta Beam whisks him to Ron permanently.
I love when, to me, this is like a big anime trope, but it's a comic trope. I love when we just enhance something by calling it mega or super or extra.
Or the Omega.
Yeah.
So this is going to whisk him to Ron forever. So Adam visits his sister and his dying father and remembers aspects of his childhood that turned him into a loner and an outcast. Basically the kind of person who would be eager to give up on his home planet and start a new life inside of a sci-fi fantasy. Now, the Mega Zeta Beam, when it hits Adam, temporarily drives him mad, and it causes him to attack Zardoth and to attack Ron. And this is where we learn that the population of Ron actually doesn't like nor trust humans very much, and they don't really like Adam. And they have a contempt for all Terrans. And the reason why this storyline went in that direction is because this was 1990, and it is a dark and / gritty take on what is the archetype of Adam Strange. You want to know how... you want to know how dark and gritty this is going to get?
Yes.
During the same storyline, Adam's wife, Alana, dies, giving birth to their daughter, Aaliyah.
That's sad.
Yeah. Because it wanted to basically... this is basically Dark Knight Returns for Adam Strange.
Yeah.
You know,
sounds like it.
Yeah. Like
I was going to make the Matthew Peterson joke of armor my head.
Yes, where it's like, let's stick him on this planet by himself where he has to be... He's given up everything on Earth for this woman, and now he loses her.
Yeah, because he's betrayed by everything that surrounds him now.
And well, it doesn't take too long before later in JLA number 20, we learn that Alana is actually alive, and she reunites with Adam and Aaliyah for an entire minute before he Zeta Beams back to Earth for other adventures. Adam Strange was also revived by Mark Waid during his JLA run. And during this singular storyline, Adam Strange successfully kidnaps the entire Justice League, including Batman, drags them to Ron, and forces them to rebuild the planet because it's completely in shatters. Because Adam Strange is kind of a villain in this storyline is generally not considered to be part of any continuity.
Oh, interesting.
Because most people don't consider this to be very out of character for Adam Strange.
Okay.
So...
I just think it's funny that he managed to get the drop on Batman.
I'll tell you what, this would be a great thing to share on our social media. This issue is adorned with an amazing cover by Howard Porter.
That's a JLA 20?
I do not know the numbers of it. This is not okay. JLA 20. It is a JLA Mark Waid storyline where Adam Strange is literally looking at the camera, whereas like all the Justice League is marching away from camera in shackles.
Oh, I've seen that before.
Yes.
Yeah, Howard Porter's excellent.
It's a great cover. Now we're going to move to 2004, where Adam Strange appears in a miniseries by Andy Diggle and drawn by Pascal Ferry called Adam Strange, but has now been retitled Adam Strange Planet Heist.
Cool. That's a cool title.
Yes. This is actually the only second series to ever bear Adam Strange's name. And this is a lead-in to the Ron Thanagarian War, which is also a lead-in to Infinite Crisis, which leads us to, Ashley, what is Infinite Crisis?
Oh, boy. Usually we do these
favorite
ones.
Segment.
Usually we do these ones in order, so I know the order. Infinite Crisis is the one with Superboy?
Which Superboy?
Prime. Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime gets mad and punches a hole in the universe.
Basically, and restarts the multiverse.
That's right.
Yeah.
I usually get to work up Crisis on Infinite Earths, that one with Hal Jordan, this one, Final Crisis.
So this all leads to our Infinite Crisis, but we're going to talk about this storyline, and we're going to talk about the Ron Thanagarian War leading up into it, so do not worry. But I just wanted to get you, I wanted you to understand 1, 2, 3.
Cool.
Fun fact, when this was published, Infinite Crisis had not even been announced yet.
Uh-huh.
And nobody really quite realized that this was a lead-in to Infinite Crisis until they announced the Ron Thanagarian War.
Ooh, that's smart. I love that.
Yeah, everybody kind of just thought like, oh, this is a new Adam Strange miniseries. Kind of cool.
I think DC could take a note on that. I think bringing like stealth intros back, I think could be fun.
Yes. Actually, to be honest with you, a lot of the lead-up for Infinite Crisis was really good. Like, the 4 miniseries, Ron Thanagarian War is one of them. I believe, I'm going to forget the rest. One of them is like Days of Vengeance, I believe.
Sounds right.
Which is about all the magical characters. There's The Secret Six, I think, is one of them. And then what's the other? I can't remember everybody. But
Countdown?
No, Countdown is post-Infinite Crisis and it's best forgotten.
Jason's favorite event, Countdown.
God, I hate Countdown. Anyways, so during this, Pascal Ferry, who I think is a great artist, actually gives Adam a new costume. It's actually his same classic costume, but it's sleeker, and to be honest with you, it's more anime influence. And it is
We'll post a picture of it.
It's my favorite Adam Strange costume, actually, to be honest with you.
Nice.
So this is also the first Adam Strange costume to finally have a fully sealing helmet like an astronaut, because before he just wore a hat. So he now has a faceplate, kind of similar to what Ashley and I did to Jupiter Jet in our Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio, which you can pre-order. I don't know. Ashley will share a link.
If you go to jupiterjetcomic.com and click the button that says pre-order.
Yes, there you go.
It'll take you right there.
But this is the first one where he actually has a fully sealed helmet.
Cool.
For a space hero, I think that's pretty important.
That's really important.
Yes. Now, during this story, Adam is in the process of relocating to Ron on a permanent basis again. To spend
comics.
Well, again, Alana is alive during this, so you kind of have to say that, like, oh, Adam Strange, Man of Two Worlds didn't happen.
Yeah. Okay. Also, every time we go comics, we're like waving our hands around. Like,
by the way, this has one of my favorite openings to any comic book series of all time.
Okay.
Is that it starts in Gotham City, and you're seeing like all these panels, and you're kind of not certain that you're on Earth because you're reading Adam Strange, right?
Yeah.
And it starts with this text box that says, "I hate this planet," and then when you pull back, you find out, oh, it's Earth. And it's cool. Adam Strange talking about Earth, which I think is a really nice. By the way, written Andy Diggle, the guy who helped basically reboot the Guardians of the Galaxy. You know the movie Guardians of the Galaxy, everybody? Andy Diggle and his, I can't remember who's his partner.
Jock?
No, Lanning. Andy Lanning? Dan Lanning.
Oh, you mean Abner and Lanning?
Forget it, Ashley. Never mind.
Andy Diggle wrote Green Arrow Year One.
Yes.
Abnett and Lanning.
Oh, am I confusing them?
Yes. Abnett and Lanning wrote A Legion and Aquaman.
Well, I sound like a boob, everyone.
Nah, it's okay. We mix up names all the
time. These names are so... all these guys write cosmic-y stuff, and all their names begin in A.
Yeah, no, you're thinking of Abnett and Lanning. I am. But Andy Diggle revitalized Green Arrow. When I wanted to read Green Arrow after the first season of the show, you gave me Diggle and Jock's Year One.
Andy Diggle, if I'm correct, wrote The Losers.
Yes. And Andy Diggle's also who John Diggle is named after.
Anyways, he's a great writer. Anyways, so... he's going to go to Ron permanently, Adam Strange is.
Got it.
And but in the process of this, Ron is destroyed or seems like it's destroyed.
Comics.
And as a Terran, Adam Strange is blamed for the destruction. It actually turns out that Adam's father-in-law, Sardoth, had transported Ron into another dimension to protect it from being destroyed by Starbreaker, which is basically a DC cosmic threat. Now, Starbreaker is a powerful energy vampire who creates chaos throughout the universe when it arrives to feed on planetary energy. Basically sounds like Galactus, right? It is later revealed that the Starbreaker is an adult form of a Sun Eater. Ashley, what is a Sun Eater?
A Sun Eater is a Superman character that's a giant alien that eats suns and destroys solar systems by association.
Basically. So Adam Strange teams up with the Omega Men and the Dark Star, some of the DC cosmic characters, to save Ron and defeat the Starbreaker. Now, then this runs right into the Ron-Thanagarian War. Now, during Planet Heist, Adam Strange fights a rogue group of Thanagarians, and during the battle, the leader of this group of Thanagarians transports Strange's adopted homeworld of Ron out of that dimension and into the Thanagarian solar system in hopes of creating a dictatorship over Ron. But what happens is that it pushed the planet of Thanagar closer to the sun. And you can guess what happened. Most of the surface of Thanagar
boiled
away. The surviving Thanagarians had to basically go live on Ron, and it led to this war. In fact, it is later retcon/discovered during Infinite Crisis that after rearranging countless other planets, Superboy Prime was the one who pushed the planet Ron into Thanagar's orbit, basically destroying Thanagar and creating the Ron-Thanagarian War. Now, Ashley,
what a dick.
Who is Superboy Prime, in case anybody doesn't know?
Superboy Prime is like the OG Superboy, or is he a clone?
No, he is the Superboy that comes from our universe.
That's
right. Yes, he is the only superhero on his universe. He's basically the Superman of, if you ever read the great Kurt Busiek Superman: Secret Identity.
Yes.
He's that Superboy if he never grew up. Yes, he's bad. So Adam Strange teams up with Hawkman, Hawkwoman, Kyle Rayner, and Kilowog in an effort to end the conflict between the Ranians and the Thanagarians. And they temporarily stop the war, and this leads directly into Infinite Crisis, where Superboy Prime causes even more chaos and confusion. And Adam is able to uncover Superboy Prime's involvement in the Ran-Thanagarian War, and they sort of infuse a peace.
Nice.
With those people. And then 52 happened. Not the new 52, but the comic book series 52. Ashley, what is that?
That's one of Jason's all-time favorite comic book events, where it's basically what if the Trinity of the Justice League took a year off, and we see what happens with a bunch of sort of, I say this with no disrespect, lower tier characters. And it was a weekly series that was co-written by kind of all of their top talent at the time. Grant
Morrison, Greg Rucka, Mark Waid, Jeff Johns.
Yeah.
Are the four. And it was weekly. It had 52 issues.
Yes.
Which was great. Now, during 52, it is revealed that Adam, during Infinite Crisis, was stranded on a planet, an unknown alien planet with Animal Man and Starfire due to a Zeta Beam accident. Now, normally this wouldn't be a huge deal, but they have no ship, or their ship is broken, and Adam has lost both of his eyes. Together, through their adventures, they fight Lady Styx, who is basically like the xenomorphs from Aliens, except meaner, and her undead minions. And eventually during this adventure, it looks like they kill Animal Man, but Animal Man's not actually dead. And Adam takes the opportunity to head back to Ron and to bring Starfire back to Earth. When they are attacked by Lady Styx, disciples of Mogo appear and they save their lives. And we just love Mogo, the living Green Lantern planet, so I wanted to mention him. When Adam finally gets back to Ron, his daughter Aaliyah clones his eyes and gives them an upgrade, which allows him to see into the electromagnetic spectrum.
Like you talked about in the 10th Cent Origin.
Exactly. And Adam Strange, Animal Man, and Starfire team up again in their own miniseries called Countdown to Adventure, but the less said about Countdown, the better.
Okay.
So let's move into the New 52.
Hey, that's when Barry Allen ran back in time because he missed his mommy, restarted the universe, everybody got more lines on their costumes, they'd only been superheroes for 5 years, and nothing about Batman made sense anymore.
Yes. Now, even though Infinite Crisis kind of put Adam Strange maybe back in the public consciousness, nothing happened with Adam Strange until about 3 years into the New 52.
Yeah.
And Jeff Lemire dragged him onto his book titled Justice League United, which is also called Justice League Canada. And his not-so-dead wife, Alana, also appears in the book. Now, this book spins right out of Forever Evil and features the following lineup. It has Adam Strange, Alana Strange, Animal Man, Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, Equinox, Green Arrow, Hawkman, Martian Manhunter, Mara, Poison Ivy, Stargirl, Robot Man, Cliff Steele, Supergirl, and Swamp Thing.
Yeah, this book, I enjoy reading this book, even though it really fell apart at the end. This, to me, now with the time that we have on it, feels like a mandate came down to Mr. Lemire where they said, these are characters that we're going to be either developing for TV or who are going to be featured in larger series. We would like you to do something with them.
And I want to talk about this because there's a lot of Canadian stuff in here. So I want to challenge Ashley's Canadianness on this episode.
All right.
So the story surrounds Adam's wife, Alana, being kidnapped by an alien beam of light and leaving nothing but a skull in its place. Adam heads to Toronto, Ontario to get Animal Man and Stargirl and get their help. And they are led by Stargirl's cosmic staff on a quest to find Alana. The Justice League introduces Mia Bin. Am I saying that right?
Honestly, I have no idea. I've never heard someone say it. It's a First Nations name.
Yeah, it's Canadian First Nations superhero, yeah.
Jason and I are going to do our best to say the name. If you know how to pronounce it, please send us an audio file.
I'm just going to say Mia Bin.
Yeah.
Okay, and we learn that she is a Watago? I've never heard of Watago.
It's basically...
What is that,
It's
actually?
a different pronunciation. It's a Wendigo.
That's what I thought.
basically a Wendigo, but it's a First Nations word. So if you want to say Wendigo for your own comfort, I think we will all excuse you.
I'll say Watago. So Adam tries to contact the aliens that kidnap his wife. They are attacked, so Green Arrow and Martian Manhunter swoop in to help and join the team, of course. And the story culminates with the entire previously mentioned team coming together, snapping up Miaban, and chasing Alana across the cosmos by tracing the aliens who took her in the first place. Basically, it seemed like there was a ton of editorial meddling, as Ashley said, and the book was canceled pretty quickly.
It's a bummer.
Yep. Then DC Rebirth happened, then DC Black Label happened, and right now, Strange Adventures is reinventing the wheel with Adam Strange right now, and we're going to stop the lesson right here because I don't really want to talk about Strange Adventures #1 too much, because that book is all about Adam Strange. But let's move into the recommended reading before we get to our discussion with the Strange Adventures team.
Yes, and recommended reading is if you want more Adam Strange goodness in your life, Professor Jason has your back. You go to geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading. We have little widgets. They take you to Amazon. You pick up this media in whatever form appeals to you, digital or physical. Take money out of Jeff Bezos' pocket and put it in ours so we can build our Zeta Beam for the campus.
This is a pretty easy list.
Okay.
#1, the best Adam Strange story of all time is Adam Strange Planet Heist. It is the mini-series that leads into Infinite Crisis. Pascal Ferry's art is amazing. If you love anime and if you've never thought about reading Adam Strange, this is the story that I would read. It's really, really good. And it has the best Adam Strange costume.
Why did you make such strong eye contact with me when you said that, Jason?
What?
It's a joke.
Because you love anime.
I do love anime.
Visual jokes don't work on an audio podcast, actually.
Podcasting famously an audio medium.
The second one is Adam Strange, Man of Two Worlds. That is the dark and gritty series. I think it's interesting to note that this is the first miniseries to try to push Adam forward. Also, it's the first one that ever had his name on it.
Great title, too.
And the last one is Justice League United Volume 1, Justice League Canada. That is the one with all the big, complicated alien stuff with the Watago and whatnot.
But you get to see him leading a Justice League team, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and I don't mind his New 52 redesign.
I like it.
It's a little complicated.
Well, I mean, New 52.
But it's not terrible. I actually kind of think they should take some of the Pascal Ferry stuff and take some of the New 52 stuff and kind of mesh it together and make the perfect Adam Strange.
Cool.
So, all right, now we're going to move into the discussion. And our discussion for this episode, we're going to be talking with the creative team that is currently controlling the fate of Adam Strange in comics, in DC Comics Black Label series right now. They're all amazing creators. Some of them are returning Geek History Lesson guests. So please allow me to introduce. You know him as the writer of Mr. Miracle and Batman, Tom King. We have the artist of Sheriff of Babylon and Eisner winning artist for Mr. Miracle, Mitch Gerads, and the artist of Terrifics and Future Quest, Evan Doc Shaner. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Hi.
I did that on purpose so that hopefully all your introductions would be on top of each other. All right, guys.
They'll have no idea who's who, so I can pretend I'm Mitch and be like, "Oh, I like beards and Nazism."
That is correct. That is correct.
There's no rules in Corona land.
You could say we're all living in a strange adventure. Oh, pun. All right. All right, Tom, my first question is for you.
I'm ready.
I want to ask you.
Is it trivia?
No, this is just straight up conversations.
Thank God.
How do you see Adam Strange? Like, what type of character is he to you as you're writing these scripts?
He's two different characters. He's a different character in Doc's version, than he is in Mitch's version. I see him as this sort of ultimate never gives up hero in Doc's version, where he's just like, nothing will stop me, I'm determined to go on. He's that beautiful vision of what we would hope a hero abroad would be. And in Mitch's version, he's like that hero plus a year, kind of like, wait, I did that? I was that? Can I be that again? What was all of it true? Was all of it meaningful? It's the idea that, being a hero in one place might not be the same in another, kind of. So yeah, he changes. He's probably the most passive character in the book in terms of how it's written. The book is called Strange Adventures. It's not called Adam Strange. And since it's geek history, you guys should know, but like, obviously Adam Strange wasn't even in Strange Adventures, the old DC comic from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, he was in Mystery in Space, right?
Right. He was, they had the character named Adam Strange in Mystery in Space, where Captain Comet was in Strange Adventures, solving mysteries in space. It made no sense. And so as the book goes forward, you'll see that Mr. Terrific is just as big a character as Adam Strange, and Alana Strange is just as big a character as Adam Strange. It's almost a 3-person book.
Now, Mitch, when Tom first brought you the idea of this book and you knew you were going to be drawing Adam Strange, where do you start as an artist? Like, how do you adapt and mold your style to fit this character or this story?
That's a good question, because I'm so used to he was a different character than I'd been using before. But I just knew that I wanted to approach my art differently. I feel like I do that with every project. I kind of have a moment, I want to do something different.
Now, Doc, your style kind of matches or symbolizes sort of like the older kind of Silver Agey, very adventurous Adam Strange runs. How did you approach your take on Adam Strange?
It's kind of similar to what Mitch said. This was an opportunity for me to kind of alter my approach a little bit, especially now that I'm coloring myself. So it's definitely me, but it's I think a different shade of what I've been doing for a while. The lines are a lot thinner than I'm used to drawing, and it's a much more open style than I've been used to. I wanted to do something new for this one, just because I felt like if I came in and did what I'd always been doing, it wouldn't be that special. And I felt like I needed to up that contrast to Mitch as well.
Well, plus too, I think you realized coloring yourself, you get to draw differently because you're not worried about how a colorist is going to handle it.
Yeah, I draw a ton less than I used to.
Now, Doc, I want to talk about that. Yeah, now Mitch has colored himself on, like Sheriff of Babylon and Mr. Miracle. Doc, for you, talk about that. What is it like now coloring yourself? Like, you talked about the thickness of your lines. What else do you change when you color yourself on top of your inks?
Oh, everything. It's so stupid that I haven't been doing this for the last 10 years. And I know Mitch does, because Mitch was the one who told me I was going to miss coloring myself a billion years ago, and he was right, and I hate it. But no, everything's different. Like I said, the line thickness. There's things that I just straight up don't draw in the line stage because I know I'll handle it in color. A lot of the special effects, lasers and explosions and stuff, I end up doing all that in color. Do you find overall it speeds you up? Oh yeah, yeah. There's so much less nitpicking over how something is going to be handled in the next stage that I don't have any control over. Whereas I know, I'm pointing toward the final art instead of, the midway.
So you get paid more to go faster? This is the best thing you've ever discovered.
Yeah. Right.
Now, this is a question to all three of you, and feel free any one of you to answer. To you guys, what is Adam Strange's most defining quality? Do you see him as an archaeologist first, a father-husband first, or a space hero? And I'm excited to see you all, or hear you all, jump on top of each other on this one.
I see him as a space hero first, and I think that's almost to his detriment. What makes him interesting about this book is I don't think he's the hero of the book. I think he's like the space hero of the book. He's not. It's different than writing Scott free for Mr. Miracle, or certainly Batman or Booster Gold. Like there are things about Adam that I distinctly don't like. There are aspects to his character that are not superhero worthy. At least they're not like Scott Free. He had doubts and he had problems, but he was always the person I was rooting for in that story. I'm not always sure I'm rooting for Adam.
I'm going to ask you a follow-up on that one, Tom. You said that there are some aspects of Adam that you don't like. Can I get a specific example of that?
I mean, it comes later, but he's a little denser than some of the other characters. He's not quite as bright. I mean, even in reading his, because I did a big reread of his stories. He's never been like an incredibly interesting character. Unlike Mr. Miracle or Batman, he's never had like a run where someone's like found something beautiful and hidden inside him. He's always been kind of this generic 1950s, and even though he was created in the 60s, but kind of just like Mr. Generic, boring white dude. And as I write him, I sort of lean into that, and I'm not so in love with Mr. Generic, boring white dude. I think people should be more complicated than that. So yeah, that's what I mean.
That's kind of what I take from it in a way, in that I think he's aware that he's a boring white dude, and I think that kind of eats him up. And like he perpetually seems lost because he's a man of two worlds. I feel like he feels like he doesn't belong in either world, and like he's always trying to figure out why he matters.
Yeah, that's exactly it, man.
Duck, how do you see Adam Strange, like in terms of those categories?
I think Tom really got it. I see him as a space hero first, but I think a lot of what he does, at least in our book, as a space hero, is at least on my side partially defined by him being a father and a husband. Everything I've been drawing so far is, he's the defender of Rand, but he's very much the defender of his family. If anything, like by a long shot, the archaeologist part of him is not really brought up much, I think.
And it's not brought up much ever in his history that I can think of.
Yeah,
someone's
it's never it's just been the thing he does in the way that.
Yeah, it seems to be like the weird part of his origin that people were like, we need one more quality to add to him. Archaeologist.
Yeah. We just needed a reason for him to like go to South America once.
That's exactly right. They're like, why would you go to South America except for archaeology? There's no other reason. It must be it.
We got to put a tan shirt with epaulets. He's an archaeologist.
Now, Tom, you talked about this in a lot of places, but I have to ask you this question. Why Adam Strange for Strange Adventures? Why now? Like, I know I've heard pieces of this story that involved Mitch and visiting Mitch in Arizona, and then that is how the origin of Strange Adventures happened. Would you please tell our listeners, where did this idea for Strange Adventures come from?
I mean, there were a few things sort of floating in my mind of what I wanted to write next after Mr. Miracle, just to curve off of what I had been doing and to leave this sort of a guy gets trauma, feels sad, finds his family, feels happy kind of thing I was doing, which I love doing, but I was ready to leave it. And in the midst of that, I went to Mitch's house for his very adorable son's baptism. And we were literally going on his shelves to be like, what character should we do next? Because again, I usually start these things with somebody giving me a character. It helps sort of narrow down the ideas. And Mitch pulled the Adam Strange omnibus off the shelf and said, "How about Adam Strange?" And I was like, "Yeah, we could do that. He's if you want to draw him, we'll come up with a story for him." So I went back the next day, and all those sort of ideas in my head about doing a book that's more, like we said, I think this is more acidic. This is more, what was it we said in the beginning, that sort of, this is more true detective. It's more noir. It's more of a dark story than the stories we've been writing before. And all that came together. And then I sort of wanted it to be a Jean Valjean, Javert thing, where there's two characters sort of fighting each other, or like billions, a balance. And so I needed another character to sort of balance it out. And I don't know, Mr. Terrific came to me. I was like, oh, that's a good character, because I needed like the ultimate detective who would never stop, and Mr. Terrific seemed to fit that perfectly. So the next day we went and got coffee, and I pitched it to Mitch, and that was it. Oh, no, the doc stuff was also, I pitched the doc stuff too, if we did it separately.
Now, Mitch and Doc, let's get into the weeds on this. You guys are drawing, as we can see, readers can read in Strange Adventures #1, you guys are drawing panels on the same page. In terms of like the layouts of the page, like how does that work? How do you guys, work the logistics of that, Mitch and Doc?
At first, it was completely separate.
Yep.
Like we just completely did our panels separately, and then merged them at the end, and like found all these little happy accidents. And as we've gotten farther into the book now, sometimes we'll write each other and be like, "Hey, what are you doing for this panel? Because that might affect what I do for the panel above it," or blah, blah, blah. So we've gotten a little more collaborative in that aspect. But like, even when I get a script from Tom, I read through the whole script once, and then I go in the file and I delete all of Evan's directions. And then I print that out again as a working script. And then I forget everything that Evan has to do. And I just focus on what I have to do. And I think I feel like that helps. Like, otherwise it's cheating. Otherwise you're a bit too omniscient of the whole thing.
No, I love that, Mitch, because it's very similar to what you hear some actors say in television shows, where, especially like mystery or cop shows, where they intentionally don't read the pages of other actors because they're like, my character doesn't know, so how would I know?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I do too. So when we get the whole issue together, I sometimes have forgotten what Mitch had on his side, or when we have the pages that we're both on, I will sometimes ask him what he's doing, just so I can, if I'm feeling kind of blah about the way I've staged a panel, I find sometimes seeing what Mitch did in that page helps me kind of bounce off him. But otherwise, I like not really knowing what's going on his side.
It's the whole like process was strangely like seamless. Like, we melted into it immediately. There was no like growing pains, I don't think. The only growing pains were the accounting side on DC.
I don't know if we can talk about that. I am curious about it, but I don't know if legally we can talk about that.
Well, no, because sometimes we're on the same page. So then they had to figure out like, well, what does 2 panels of a page equal, and blah, blah, blah.
Right. I've got a sixth of a page in this issue. This last issue we did. So.
I was going to say, did you guys force DC to finally incorporate the pay-by-panel system?
Kind of. I wish I had that on Mr. Miracle.
Now, Doc, I want to ask you, with Mitch's art, you can see a lot of the film noir influences, because his storyline is directly relating to the murder mystery. Are you feeling any inspiration from the film noir aspect of this story?
No, I think because so much of my side takes place off Earth. At some point in the year or so leading up to working on the book, I got back into Mobius again, and he ended up just becoming my kind of touchstone for what I was doing on my side. Was a lot of the 80s Mobius sci-fi.
I think in my sort of original pitch, and we've discussed this before, but like I had his side as being much more idealized, almost throughout the whole thing, sort of an idealist story. And then I started seeing what Doc was doing. I was like, oh no, this is not an idealization. It's kind of a disintegration. And so I think you see like it starts off really pretty and idealistic, and then by issue 3, you start to see stuff that I don't think you'd expect to see on that side of the story, where it starts to get, I don't know, I keep using the same word, but like where it starts getting really savage, you know. I think it's all the more shocking because it sort of starts in one place, and then Doc's story, both in terms of art and story, is sort of a descent into madness a little bit.
So you're saying by issue 5, this series will be called Savage Adventures. Got it.
It's an S, so I can alphabetize it correctly.
And then Mitch and Doc are going to institute the pay by character system at DC Comics.
Now, Tom, the Legion gig.
Oh my God! There you go. Spoilers for you guys' next book. We know. All right. Tom, what Adam Strange runs in the past have you been like pulling from and looking for inspiration for this book?
I mean, I do. Same with Mr. Miracle, where I went back to the original stuff, the Carmine Infantino, Gardner Fox, Murphy Anderson stuff. From the Mystery in Space. A lot from there. There hasn't really been that much greatness with Adam Strange. I read most of it, not all of it, but I read most of it. I read the sort of New 52 Pascal Ferry stuff, and I read the beautiful Andy and Adam Kubert stuff, which is not a great story, but is a beautiful book from the 80s. Because Adam Strange sort of had his Watchmen thing. They tried to make him dark and deep in the 80s, and it didn't quite catch on. But it's a beautiful book. So I read most of his appearances, and like I said, his character had no. The best way to say it is he has no pain. There's no angst there. The one story that really I think captured him, which I think did pretty well, was the Paul Pope story in Wednesday Comics. It was called Strange Adventures, where the concept behind that was at the time was different, so that like Adam like turned 50, and it was almost like what that Mark Miller series he did Daylight or something, or
Starlight.
Starlight. Yeah. It was more of that sort of thing where he got older and then he went back and felt like a warrior again. Where I think both Paul Pope and Mark Miller were sort of doing like, Adam, the Zeta Beam as a metaphor for Viagra, which is an interesting take, but it wasn't sort of our take.
Now, this is to all of you. A lot of our listeners, they're always looking for recommended reading, like for if they like Adam Strange, what should they check out? And since I hope, and Tom, definitely, you just said that you've done a lot of research into Adam Strange, is there a book that you would recommend to people that are new to Adam Strange or a past run that you'd recommend?
If I had to recommend something to read, I would go back, and this is what I read that actually sort of influenced me more than Adam Strange was I would go to the EC Weird Science books, the EC sci-fi books, so especially the stuff by Al Williams and Wally Wood, and you can get that. They just came out with a really good one that's like the 75 best EC stories. It's like a hardcover, or you can get the archives and just get the Weird Science archives, especially like volumes like 3 and 4. Just in terms of like incredible late 50 or that's like early 50s sci-fi with bubble helmets and with incredible twists and beautiful princesses who turn out to be evil monsters, like all that stuff. If you're looking for like a cool what Adam Strange is actually based on, I think that's a more fun read than to go back and read the Infantino stuff.
Now, Mitch, you're the one that had the omnibus that sort of inspired this entire comic book. Is there any story out of that giant book that you're like, this is the one that I would recommend?
I don't think so. It's a weird, like Adam Strange is a weird thing, especially to read in omnibus form, because it's like I always equate it to when I first started watching Alias. So when the DVD collections were out, so you're binging it and like immediately you see the formula that just keeps happening over and over and over. And that's kind of those old Adam Strange stories is he gets zapped there and then he solves a mystery of the week and then he gets zapped back at a bad time. Pretty much every issue of that book.
Yeah, it's got that Julius Schwartz was obsessed with like bringing science to children, but he knew nothing about science. So he created this great irony in like in 50s and 60s comics where he'd like, we need more. He would tell his writers, like, I'm only publishing stories that teach children science. So the writers also had no idea what science was. So every story would be like, oh, we're fighting these monsters. Oh, if we use this weird chemical formula I read about in this book I popped out of the library, that solves the problem. It's always like a science fact that he wants to teach to kids that solves it. It's like that's like the Popeye spinach of Strange Adventures.
It's a little bit like the early Doctor Who, because Doctor Who, when it first started out, was an educational program as well. And then as soon as they introduced the Daleks, they were like, oh, people like monsters.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Now, I've heard about a DC Showcase issue that I recommend only because it's Superman and Adam Strange, but it's drawn by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. And that's always fun to look at.
That's a really good one.
Now, you guys have told me about a bunch of different stuff that you're doing to make this title. Like, Doc, you said you're coloring yourself. Mitch, I want to ask you, because, and if I get this wrong, I apologize. You're, for the first time ever, are you doing backgrounds traditionally, or is it the covers traditionally?
So I'm doing all the covers traditionally, but I'm still like doing it digital in a way. Like, I don't want to sacrifice a good design idea just because I want it all to be on a single page I can sell. So sometimes I'll have a lot of like superimposed images, which I'll just do on separate pages and then scan them all in and then digitally composite them. So some covers, if someone were to buy the cover, it'd actually be like 3 different sheets of paper. But then I guess the like main interesting story to that is that I'm doing all the backgrounds digital or digitally, which has been really fun. And like I stumbled upon a look that I liked combining the two, and I'm really happy with it. It's like super fun.
Now, Tom, you said that this book is a little bit of you're trying to push yourself out of this sort of tortured character kind of story process. Have you changed anything about your process in terms of like outlining, or I don't even know if you use a vision board or anything like that?
What's a vision board?
Oh, have you never heard of that? I don't use one either, but there's apparently, Ben Percy has talked about it a little bit, where it's this idea that you have something up on your screen or around you that like has either the mood or the look or sort of like the feelings of emotion you're wanting to put into your story.
I do that, but like I was saying, like if you look at the DC Daily, these shows my office, and you'll see that I have all these EC comic weird science things, and I was just looking at this picture just on my desk where the first thing Mitch sent to me was the picture of Adam Strange from the cover of his autobiography, and he gave me the original art for it. I look at it every time, and I really think that's what changed me about the character now that I'm thinking back on it, because I just look at it and he looks like such a handsome douchebag. The way you drew him was so perfect. I was like, oh, he's not scot-free. He's something different. Yeah, I guess I do kind of do that subconsciously. I'm doing 3 different books right now, and I'm doing them all differently. This one, I'm trying to react to the art more than I think I previously have. Because we're just texting each other constantly throughout the day to keep sane in the middle of this virus thing. And so, like the week before I'm about to write a script, first of all, they've already probably done a cover, so I can react to their cover. So I'm doing these scripts almost very last minute. And I asked, I was like, what do you guys want to draw? And so they can get into that. And I think of this more as an art book than as hopefully all the themes come out, but because it's put in that easy 3-panel grid thing where I just see 3 beautiful pictures, like I'm just trying to make 3 gorgeous pictures that I feel like I have the best artists in comics at the height of their powers. And I want to make sure that I'm showing that off like that. So it's much more of an art first approach than I think any book I've ever done.
Now, Doc, I would be remiss in this interview if I did not talk about you. I think are one of the, I would say, best cover artists currently working in comics. When you were doing all these variant covers over the last 2 years, man, it was everyone you were sharing was just killer. So I have to ask you,
Jason.
Yeah, man. Well, I gotta ask you, dude. What is your process for coming up with covers? Like, what is your secret mojo?
Oh my God, I don't know. I mean, a lot of it depends on the job. I don't, like with the Wally West stuff, it was all about what they were trying to accomplish with that book. I don't know. I kind of make it up as I go. So I don't know that I have a process per se.
I just had to ask you about that because I remember sometime last year or the year before, you shared this image of Wonder Girl, I believe, for the new Young Justice, and the internet lost its mind the minute you shared it. Like, it was like the most shared image that day in Twitter. So again, kudos to you, man. Keep it up. That's what I'll say.
Well, thanks, man. That was a weird one. I couldn't believe how people responded to it, just because it's not a character I'd ever drawn before or had any. Like, I liked her, but I hadn't really had any affiliation for it. And I was surprised.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And also, like, a lot of the covers you've done, Doc, for like some of the omnibuses have been just insanely stunning. All right, Mitch.
For no reason.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, Mitch, my final question to all three of you, but I'm going to start with you, Mitch. You, what's the weirdest thing about Adam Strange? Like, what is something about him that you're just like, why did they decide to do this? The fin on his head, the tiny jetpack, the Zeta. Like, what is the weird thing about Adam Strange? Because he is, no pun intended, a very strange character.
Oh, geez. Boy, that's a tough one. I think it's a tough one because of what we were saying before. He's so kind of generic and like he's just like baseline white guy hero. And I guess that's my answer.
All right. Tom, what's the weirdest thing about Adam Strange to you?
From our book or from history?
Anything, your choice, dealer's choice.
I think the weirdest thing about Adam Strange, and narratively this has actually caused me problems, is how he calculates when the Zeta Beam is coming and nobody else can make that calculation. Like, nobody ever explains it in the comics. Like, why? Nobody ever, they're never like, here's the secret to the Zeta Beam. Where is it going to show up next time? Just like, in one issue, Zeta Beam hits him by accident. By the next time, he's like, I'm the only one who knows where it's going to come next because I did this calculation. But he never shows that. He's an archaeologist. He's not a mathematician. I don't get it.
It's not a countdown? I always thought it was just a countdown.
No, it comes to a different spot in the Earth, in the southern hemisphere.
Oh, like the location. My bad. Yes.
The location. He has to be there at a certain time, but it's not the same time every time. So somehow he has access to when and where the Zeta Beam is going to come. But he's the only person on Earth who has that access. I don't know how he but yet he doesn't know when it's going to wear off, so he doesn't have all the calculations.
Oh, story logic. Doc, what is the weirdest thing about Adam Strange in your mind?
I'll say it. It's the suit.
Oh, let's hear more about this.
When the guys brought it to me, my very first thought was, I have never liked that costume.
But the modern costume was worse. That costume only got worse through the years, right? Like the fatter. At least we went back to the original.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Doc. If you could change one thing about that costume, like tomorrow, what would you get rid of? Like the fin?
I won't say because I'm definitely going to put it in the book without telling these two schmoes.
Oh, all right.
One of the coolest things about Doc's side of the book so far has been that, like, Doc's been attacking his stories like a mid-90s action figure line. Like, every issue is, like Scuba Batman and Hang Glider Batman.
All right, now, Tom, Strange Adventures #1 is available digitally and on Comixology, any comic retailer. Strange Adventures #2 will be out sometime in the future. We don't know right now at the time of this recording.
It's printed. It was the last DC book to be printed.
Oh.
So it exists in some diamond warehouse somewhere.
So if you know where that warehouse is, you can read Strange Adventures #2 tomorrow if you break into it.
I'm selling my copy for $12,000.
I should say, if you want a signed copy, you can go to Midtown Comics or Third Eye Comics.
Oh, nice.
And just they'll send it to you. They have mail.
In case any of our listeners aren't reading this book, what would you say to them to convince them to read it?
To me, look, let me put, I think this is the best way to put it. Right now, in the middle of this coronavirus thing that we're all in, the entertainment world has on some level shut down a little bit. Like sports is down, TV is down, because they can't get together and make products, right? Comics are not down. We don't need socialization to make our product. We need a little socialization to distribute our product, but to actually make the thing, we don't. And because of that, I can take this concept, which was always about the paranoia of an attack coming, and I can inject the themes of this problem. So I think if I do this right with the best artists in comics, coming out on the other side of it, this will be the first sort of artistic product that speaks to our time. That speaks to our current moment. We in comics have that ability, and there's almost no other genre that does, besides like making your own, besides like TikTok. And podcasts. So if you're looking for an art project that responds both to the political moment and to the social moment, that happens to be also the most beautiful comic on the stands. I think that's what you want.
Well, I think that's an excellent way to summarize the series, guys. I have read Strange Adventures #1. I've also got a sneak peek of Strange Adventures #2, thanks to Mitch. You definitely want to read this book. I want to thank Mitch Gerads, Tom King, and Doc Shaner for joining me on this podcast. Mitch, where can people find you online in case they want to see some of your artwork?
Just the best place is Twitter, @MitchGerads, no space in the middle.
And Tom, where can people follow you in case they want to be confused about whether you're Tom King or Tom Taylor?
I'm Tom King. It's @TomKingTK. Or if you can forget that, you just Google Tom King Twitter. I'm sure it'll come up.
And Doc, where can everybody find you online? Because they definitely need to check out some of these amazing covers.
I'm at Doc Shaner on Twitter, and then everything else feeds into there.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining me on Geek History Lesson.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
And I thought that was a great discussion. And their kids, you won't hear their kids interrupting our discussion, but I'm just saying that in the Zoom call, so we had some little kings and not some little kings. We had some little Shaners and some little Gerads interrupt the podcast.
Are we going to be sharing the photographic evidence of this?
Oh, yes. The photograph episodes will be there. The patrons have already seen it over at patreon.com/Jawiin.
That's the thing about being a patron is you get access to all of this stuff early.
Yeah. And now let's go into one of my least favorite sections of the podcast, the teaching tweet.
We get a tweet literally every single day at GHL Podcast telling us to keep this. The teaching tweet.
Look, I'm just keeping it. I'm just, the people have spoken and I've listened. I'll keep it. I don't really enjoy it, but I will keep doing it because the people love it.
I'll say this every time. It was your idea.
I know. But I've moved and I've changed, Ashley.
No growth, no change, no evolution. I think that's what we preach here on this podcast. The teaching tweet is one of the last parts of the podcast, wherein 240, except we try to do 140.
This one's longer.
Oh boy. Characters. Professor Jason's going to sum up everything he just taught you about Adam Strange, and this will be shared on our official podcast Twitter at GHL Podcast.
If you spend your life following a cosmic beam across Earth to zap you to the other side of the universe just so you can make love to an alien, then you might be crazy enough to wear a fin on your head. Hashtag Fin Life, hashtag Adam Strange.
That's pretty good.
All right, now we're going to move into the honor roll. Ashley, what's that?
The honor roll is if you go to Apple Podcasts and you rate us 5 stars, we'll read whatever you write, even if it's not nice. Or if you're an international person, because we can't access your iTunes, you just take a sweet little screenshot and send it to geekhistorylesson@gmail.com, and we will feature you. Also, please, in that email, tell us where you're from.
Yeah, we like listening to the international listeners. Well, some of our American Apple Podcast reviews. We have one from Ryan Bemmel, who said, I discovered Jason and Ashley through Collider and the Schmodown. This show is so informative as it is entertaining. I've actually been looking into new characters that I really wasn't a fan of before. I listen to the show while I'm working, and it makes the day better. Keep it up, you guys. Can't wait to see what you do. Jason, thank you for your service. Well, Ryan, that's so awesome. Thank you for joining along, and I'm glad you're checking out. People, when they say that they check out characters that they weren't fans of before because of our podcast, is I think that's really the best compliment.
Yeah, it's also the whole reason that we do this.
Our second honor roll inductee is Jezatrix, who said, I just recently started listening to this podcast and I can't stop. I'm learning more about comic and fantastical characters I already love and finding more stories unknown to me. The hosts speak clearly and are entertaining, and they always provide reading suggestions for each topic, which is perfect for a bookworm like me. Fantastic job. Can I have a coffee from the Teacher's Lounge? Well, Ryan Bemmel and Jezatrix, we have given you the key to the Teacher's Lounge because you are a part of the honor roll. And yes, you can have a coffee from the Teacher's Lounge, but you must be warned that you cannot touch the sweetener in the corner.
Who does it belong to?
In the yellow box, because it belongs to Dr. Schwartz.
What does Dr. Schwartz teach?
Dr. Schwartz teaches geography.
Nice.
Geography. That's what Dr. Schwartz teaches. So welcome, Jezatrix and Ryan Bemmel. If you want to be like the two of them, go to Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review, and it lets us know that you enjoy the podcast, and we'll read it, whatever you write on the air.
I do want to say this. If anyone works for a coffee company or knows someone who works for a coffee company and they would like to collaborate with us to make an official Geek History Lesson Mind University blend, I would love that.
Okay. Sure.
That'd be so cool.
Cool. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere you can listen to podcasts, you can find us. And also, don't forget to follow this podcast on social media. Where can they do that, Ashley?
You can do that at facebook.com/geekhistorylesson or on Twitter at GHL Podcast.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jawiin. That's Jawiin. You can follow Ashley on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. And also, don't forget to support the Patreon over at patreon.com/Jawiin. That's Jawiin. Guys, we do 5 extra podcasts a month. You get like 5 extra podcasts.
So many.
There's like 4 episodes of GHL Extra over there. There's always an episode of Jason and Ashley's Excellent Adventures, which is a personal podcast. And then there's always an episode of something extra like Blackest Nightclub, which is actually a video podcast, which is pretty great. But go over there. Today, we're going to be talking about an Adam Strange cartoon.
Ooh.
And what that could be like. But now we're to the last section of this podcast. Hashtag stick around, the part where we make sure you stuck through the plugs. And we want to ask you, Ashley, let's talk about this. DC trying to make some movies.
Yeah.
About their DC heroes.
Yeah.
Should there be an Adam Strange live action movie? Would this be a good one to adapt? A bad one to adapt? What do you feel?
This would be an excellent one to adapt.
I agree.
And I have a hot take on who should play Adam Strange in the movie. I'm sorry in advance to Sean, Cephos, who is a wonderful Adam Strange.
I think it's Cephos.
You're not my pick. Mm-hmm. You tweeted at me once. It was very funny.
But you're already throwing him under the bus.
Already throwing him under the bus.
Sean, you come on Geek History Lesson anytime.
Anytime.
But she's going to throw you under the bus. Be warned.
I think Taylor Kitsch should play Adam Strange because
Taylor Kitsch, John Carter Taylor Kitsch.
Oh, that's exactly why. Right. John Carter was terrible. And he's
not a terrible movie.
He's not great in it.
He's not great in it.
However, if you haven't seen his work in the last couple years, he's really leveled up and has become an interesting actor. He's a little older. He's a little grizzled. So, let's tell this other story of an Earthling in a strange world and do it right.
You know who my pick for Adam Strange would be?
Tell me.
Taylor Edgerton.
Taron Egerton.
Is it Taron?
It's Taron.
Excuse me, I heard you're Taylor.
Yeah.
My bad.
Taron Egerton.
Taron, you're welcome to come on the show anytime. I'll mispronounce your name all
We can talk about Rocket Man.
We know he listens. I think he would be great because I think when you think about Adam Strange and you think about the archaeology and the attitude, I think you got to have...
You want an Indiana Jones type?
A little bit of Indiana Jones Han Solo in there. Yeah. I mean, come on. Let's be honest here. This dude flies clear across the light years to make love to an alien chick. He's a little bit of a cad.
Yeah, or he really loves her.
I think he's a little bit of a cad.
Or they get married and have babies.
Yeah, but he doesn't, like, you got to think about the first couple of times he goes.
Yeah,
like, this dude is obsessed with going to that spot in Singapore immediately after seeing this lady.
Well, maybe he wants to hang out with that guy from Facebook who lives in Singapore because he don't pay his taxes.
I don't know what any of that means.
Whichever one Andrew Garfield played.
Actually, if you're gonna throw some references in here, we got to be able to understand.
His name is Eduardo something.
The reason why I wanted to ask you this question during Stick Around is because I think Adam Strange is like the perfect character that you could make a movie that is completely separated from all
don't need Batman, don't need Shazam.
From all the DC nonsense. And if you just made a good movie and then that DC logo comes up, people would be like, this is a comic book?
I agree. I also will say, even though Jason and I did pick two white guys, I mean, you could cast anyone to play Adam Strange.
Oh, fair.
You could cast Henry Golding for all I care. Like,
it could be anybody.
Yeah.
Adam Strange doesn't have to be white.
Which I think is what's kind of cool about the character, is he could really be anyone.
I mean, to be honest with you, my pick would be to make the Ronians a different race. You know, which is something that I thought the last Airbender movie did very well. Like where like each different kingdom was like a different nationality.
I was like, don't say that. Where they made everyone white?
No, they made everybody the main cast white. But if you notice, like the Fire Nation were Asian, and the Water Nation were typically like Native Americans.
Yeah.
I thought that was a smart pick.
We can make, what's the name of his dad, his father-in-law who created Zeta Beam? Sardath or something like that? He should be played by Kim's Convenience star, Sujit, Mr. Mehta.
Oh, okay, sure. Fine. I'm fine with that. Let's give him a bump up. I would pick like Yinsen, the guy who played Yinsen, and I think his name's Sean Taub.
Sure. Oh, yes.
Is his name. But I think Adam Strange, man. I also just think that Adam Strange would be a perfect update of Flash Gordon.
I agree.
Which I think we are hungry, which I think is the reason why that Mark Millar series Starlight, which is basically like an update of Flash Gordon, is like one of his best books.
Future Retro is always cool.
Yeah, I think we're hungry for Future Retro, which is also the reason why we keep talking about the Fantastic Four. Why I keep talking about the Fantastic Four is because I'm thinking that Future Retro could like be like the perfect flavor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now.
Cool.
And I think this would be the perfect flavor for the DC Cinematic Universe.
There you go.
So there you go.
Get this out before Fantastic Four, DC.
There you
Warner Brothers, AT&T.
Or get it out before the Starlight movie or the Flash Gordon reboot, which will happen.
I'm honestly shocked it hasn't happened yet.
They will reboot Flash Gordon again.
Also because you could do Flash Gordon and you could do it intentionally, like lower budget, and it could be really fun.
Well, they've kind of already rebooted Flash Gordon already because they did that movie in the 80s. And in the 80s, he wasn't a space hero. He was an American football player. So they kind of made him dumb. And so that was how they updated it. But I would say, like, I would take it back. I would just, like, lean all into the crazy fin on your head space stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so there you go.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. That has been your lesson on Adam Strange. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. I am Jason Cosmic Beam Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson. And Professor Jason, will you please dismiss the class?
Class is dismissed.